Well, that'll be useful. That'll be useful. What? Yeah, my microphone's actually on now, which is good. Okay. All right. Yeah, no, I forgot to turn my microphone on. So I have like my microphone's powered like XLR. I have like the little basically the 45-volt phantom power switch. I use like a physical mute button, and but when you restart the computer, it's turned off. It's like a soft button, not a hard button. So there we go. How's that sound? Is it good? Is the quality good? Oh wow, my tablet turned on eventually. Amazing. I have a video I never put out about the fact I changed from a Senselaz tablet back to a Wacom tablet, and the drivers are fucked. Oh, there we go. Yeah, my laptop's sort of starting to be a little bit unhappy with its place in the world. It's kind of getting towards the end of its useful life, but it's getting on a bit now. So I've had it since I've had it since 2020, and haven't those years flown? Anyway, right, let's go back to what I was talking about. So, yeah, legitimate software engineer on the call. So it's me. So I'm doing so basically at my business. We are currently, I am currently evaluating, mostly for cost reasons, to be honest, two reasons, but moving from Figma back to Sketch. And my argument here is I'm going to do some design system building to kick some more tires on it, and also test out a thesis, right? So I've been using Sketch for personal projects for about a year, but not in anger very much for the more deeper product work that I do, right? Oh, okay. Gonna switch to computer and chat. So yeah, I might just hold off for a second. I have my viewer, and I know the viewer, so. What are we gonna do? Gonna open up something useful, something good. Okay, yeah. So, at my company, we're evaluating Sketch for a few reasons. One, which I'll show in a second, the way handovers work, the way versioning works is very different. It's more privacy focused, has better permissions. It's also a shitload cheaper. And the big sticking point is the building of design systems. So this is coinciding with some methodological changes in how we're working, which also I'm not a big design system guy, effectively. Not so much I have anything against them in principle, but it's one of those things which more often than not becomes either a shield with which to protect yourself, or it can become something where you do too much work up front. It becomes very immobile, and I'm advocating for a simpler way of building stuff, which is more self-serve, because it's a bit like when you build microservices into every application ever when you're a developer. A lot of the time you probably could have just had one server and that probably would have been fine. And you introduce all this complexity because someone at like a FANG company someone at a FANG company is doing it, therefore you should, because you might scale up to the size where you need to do this, but actually in reality you probably won't, and you've got this burden. So anyway, so my argument is that by having, in some ways, having fewer tools can lead to lower complexity as you go along, right? So conventional wisdom says more tools equals more better. 1 second. Yeah, more tools equals more better, but also I think it can accelerate the speed at which you reach that complexity plateau, right? So when you build a design system, you start with one thing, you create what in developer parlance, there's only a developer on the thing, but he knows what I'm talking about, but is like every time you build something which relates to something else, you've created an abstraction of it, and then that number will grow, and eventually you'll create abstractions on that abstraction, and this is what we call indirection, right? So each one of these, if I have a problem here but its source is here, And the further out this goes, I can no longer directly see the source of my thing, right? There's like, it's not directly in front of me, right? We've bound these things together, and then we have to maintain them. And this is the thing where there's lots of methodologies in development for handling this. There are fewer in design world, and the tools are worse, and the visibility is also worse. So this is what a lot of this leads us to. But at some point, all of these design systems, when they get larger, will do this. This will happen. It's the rate at which it happens, visibility, and how you can deal with it, which really counts, right? So having more tools can make that worse. And within like UX, UI design circles, there's a lot of conventional wisdom saying, well, I've got more tools, it's going to work better, right? Not necessarily. So if we go into my homemade meme, which is, that, and in the middle, you've got, I have to use design tokens. I have to make everything responsive. I have to have a variable for everything. I have to make sure everything sits in an auto layout. Yeah. And the design system in Figma needs to be the same as in code. They need to have parallels. And I'm going to sort of dissect these point by point very quickly, and then also show you why I think the system might be better. And I'm going to do a bit of it if I have time. But like the thing with design tokens are ultimately a buzzword. Let's not even go into it, but they are. Making responsive designs inside something like Figma or Sketch is poor. You have much less granularity than you have in markup or markup languages like CSS. You have access to breakpoints. You don't have anywhere near the number of tools to make effective replications of responsive layouts. It's folly. It's a waste of time. And there's all these micro decisions you make as you go through things, which you can make with using poor tools, a huge cost to your time, which can be solved by being sat next to a developer for like 5 minutes and watching him stretch it up and down and writing notes. You don't need to represent that in design. It's silly. It's a waste of time. Things like making sure variables are there. The variable system in Figma is not very well implemented. Also, the use of variables is where it's ambiguous, and it's against a system that's really ripe for misuse. And again, where in code you have a direct correlation between, well, this is here. Oops, let's do this one. This is here, this is here, this is here, this is here. So that indirection problem I mentioned before, actually finding your way back to here is much easier in code than it is in something like Figma, because they're not separate systems. This is all text and they're all in files. So you have to find the right folder to find the thing in most of the time, right? I'm simplifying, but that's the broad case. You haven't got two entirely separate systems you have to lean on, which aren't physically connected in any way to find that paper trail. It makes it harder, right? And again, it's a system that has no guardrails, and it's very hard to it's very easy to misuse and very hard to use effectively, because it's not only is it half-baked, it's abstract. It's all very abstract. Things like everything being an auto layout. The example carted around by designers all the time is, if I don't put an auto layout, developers won't know how to build it. That's just bollocks. Front-end engineers have been doing this, or developers have been doing this since before these tools were available. Inside things like Figma, pre-Figma existing, we had tools similar to what auto layout does now. Not quite auto layout, it represents Flexbox. Flexbox is, I think, younger than Figma, but probably not by that much. And in fact, yeah, it's a representation of Flexbox. Front-end software engineers, UI developers, UX developers, whatever you want to call it, front-end developers, they already know Flexbox, right? And they have more tools than you to do this. And the thing that you're representing, they have additional concerns, given that thing with responsivity, some other constraints that work differently between Figma, because it's not a true representation of what the browser can do. There's other things they have to do no matter what you do, right? It's a simpler domain. You've got a simpler version. You've got a simplified version of the tool. If building a building is bricks and rebar and concrete, you are using Duplo, right? It's maybe a bit of an exaggeration. Not really. Actually, no, not really. No, it's not really. No, it probably is closer to like Lego. Maybe Technics or Meccano compared to the bricks, mortar, and that they're building a thing. This is a simplified version of a thing. And that goes to my main point as well, as right, the design system in Figma needs to be the same as the code. No, you don't have the fidelity in this tool to represent realistically the code. So whenever someone says to me, the future is Figma generating code, that's not reality. And it's the same when it goes to things like when AI just spits out a thing that just works. It doesn't. It spits out a thing that looks like it works. There's so much more complexity in the thing you're making, right? And if you don't understand, that's cool, but reality begs to differ, right? There's other things that happen when you build a functional system. This is why you build a representation of that system, and the design system is supposed to be there to speed up your iteration speed. You're supposed to be able to do this faster than developers, right? Is the point. And if you're in a situation, you're building a design system that's of complexity enough and pre-baked enough and mobile enough that you can't then respond to business changes for something that is ultimately a representation of the system you're eventually going to build, it's no longer fit for purpose. Is the key takeaway of all of this, right? This thing should always be mobile, very adaptable to change. Your bottlenecks, you have worse tools, you're not as well acclimatized to deal with these problems, you have worse ways of identifying them, you have worse ways of dealing with them. What you're doing in the first place is not the actual product, it's a representation of the product, right? It's a communications tool, it's ultimately a picture, okay? And the value in that is its ability to communicate what needs to happen and that collaboration, but again, it's a collaborative tool. So tying yourself in knots of big complex design systems is not fruitful. So that's when we get to the other side of this. So you might think I might be over here. Hopefully you realize why I'm over here. They don't work, right? You need to be able to make them iterate and be a living, breathing thing. So going back to my main point of why that system might be, for a lot of people, actually better in Sketch, it's because the tools are worse. And there will become a time where you will end up with this idiosyncratic system that you need to know how to manage and you need to know how to work, right? Leveraging more tools just can just speed that up. Also, the complexity. When that thing you say, well, I need a microservice because, Stripe has one or Amazon has one or whatever. You're not Stripe, you're not Amazon, right? You don't necessarily need that complexity. I'm going to take an example. Untitled UI, right? This is a moderately popular UI kit. If we look here, we've got a very standard-ish Figma setup. Again, they're not uniform. There's different ways to approach this. So we've got some variants and then we've got some build-up on those and what sort of thing. And think about your system. Think about when you go to the buttons, right? We have, let's not even count how many variants that is. It's a shitload. Does your system for your company, your application, require this many variants? Be honest. No. How many of these sizes do you use? How many times do you use a button, an icon on the left versus the right? How many times do you have, and also, once you've built this and you've spent all this time building this, what happens when you need to change it, right? Because we can see these abstractions here. We've got a button basis which sets out the sizes. We've got the dots, right? These are constructs that have been brought into the second tier and then into additional tiers and further abstracted out. If I need to decide that something about this fundamentally needs to change, I had to peck at it to figure it out, right? I've backed myself into a corner. And it's not about not backing yourself into corners, you have to, but it's about tactically picking the right corners to back yourself into, right? And this is like a big part of what software development is. You can't avoid the corners, but you have to think, when I'm in there, how do I get out, right? or what is this corner? And again, the tools they have as software engineers to manage that are significantly better than you do in design tools. But what we do get is immediacy, right? We get this immediate. We haven't got those hoops to jump through. And a big part of design system building is introducing hoops, right? Going back, so the thing is, we don't necessarily need to be more pragmatic about the systems you build. And there's something quite nice about the simplicity of building design systems in Sketch when you start saying to yourself, do I need that? And there's a thing with cognitive load, right? When it happens in the process. Cognitive load is obviously how complex something is, but when you have to think about it, Sketch's system pushes it to the front rather than to the back, right? So you can build something quickly in Figma, realize much later on, fuck, my approach doesn't work, let's go rebuild all these components and all the ones they rely on and the ones they rely on, and let's find them, and let's, do you know what I mean? In Sketch is much simpler. So where inside Figma is, so going to my untitled file. Oh look, there's their stock price. Their IPO didn't go well. Who knew? But yeah, so say if we're building a component out, right, we've got this rectangle. And then we go, well, it's had some properties. We've got variants, text overrides, booleans, and instance swaps. Now we can represent all three of these things in Sketch with the exception of variants, right? And also variants commingle somewhat with the variable system, and the variable system can interfere with, I've built some of these systems myself as well. It can get very complicated. Point is, right, you have these three things. you don't have this, and you don't have. In fact, actually, I'm on a free tier now, so I can't even show you. Can I have variables? I'm on the free, no. Oh, can I? Oh, I can make them in the free tier. Great. Yeah, so we have like variables of types. We have color variables. We have numbers. We have like whatever, right? And then we've got the scopes of the variables. It sounds great on paper. They're kind of messy. And again, you kind of need guardrails. Need systems, right? Systems need guardrails all around. Anyway, but yeah, in Sketch, it's just overrides all the way down. So let's make the same thing. Let's make ourselves a little button component. Let's make that one like 37 pixels. And we'll just like put some words in it, right? So we're gonna do this both in Sketch and Figma. We're gonna do the same one. So we just put like, I don't know, can't type, button, and then let's make that a little bit smaller. We'll wham this into a layout, and then what we'll do, we'll make that a center. We'll just make that equal all around. Make it 12 and 8. Why not? And then we'll set the width to fit. And then this should be set to fit and fit already. Cool. Let's give it a background color. Let's say it's blue. Let's make it a nicer blue. There we go. Let's go with that. Let's go with like modern tech purple. There we go. Modern tech purple. It was Linear that started this, by the way. Well, didn't start it, but they're big proliferator in it. Anyway, point is, now we've got our button, right? Let's do the same thing in Figma. We'll do, well, I can't remember how big it was to get rid of that. So we'll just do that, and it was like, what, 37 pixels high, so something like that, whatever. And then we'll put some text inside. We'll just be like, button 1, no, just button. Make it bold, and then we'll turn the background to a similar tech purple. There we go, good enough. Tech purple, and then we'll make the text white. And what we'll do is put that into a layout. We'll change the width to hug contents. And then, where is our padding? There it is. And what was this, 12 and 8, I think? I think it was something like that. And then, I can't remember what I rounded to. Let's just say it was like that. Okay, right, so they're similar. Okay, and let's turn this into a component, and back in Sketch, we'll turn it into its equivalent. Oh, they are quite different tech purples, aren't they? It's a very different... This is my Figma tech purple, and this is my Sketch tech purple. Let's just go with it. So... and we'll turn this into a let's call this button. There we go. And then now I can press C, which is a much nicer workflow. And we'll do the same thing over here. We will go into assets, and then maybe this is, we have done. Oh, we did. Let's call some button as well. Button into assets, creating this file. Drag out button. There we go. And then now we have our component, right? Inside Sketch already, I can be like, hello, this is the thing. And I haven't had to hook anything up. This is, you get this for free. There's no setup here. Inside Figma, I have to come back into here, and I have to be like either this way. Well, actually, I'm gonna do, probably the best way to do it is come out to here, go to properties, do text. I don't know, label, and then I go back into here, and then I just hook this up to label. I forgot to give it a default. Hang on, back into here, and then just like, I don't know, text, right? So now I'm back to where I was in Sketch. It's slower, but I can still, do this. Cool. So the workflow works the other way around in here. So I just have my override set by default. Everything's on. I can say what I can and can't do with extreme granularity, right? So I can say, well, we can change let's not allow you to change the alignment, text color, font size, font weight, or visibility. You have to have text, and also, yeah, the button, you can't change the fill color. Great. So now the only thing you get is the text. You can't change anything else. And we have this symbol instance thing, right? So if I create a second button, so if I call someone button/primary, okay, and then call someone button/secondary, okay, and this one's going to be, oh, let's go for another one. Let's go for, let's go for, there we go, Tech-Genta, right? Tech Magenta. You've seen this color combo before. Of course you have. Of course you have. And then now, because they're sort of namespace to each other, like this is what it's namespacing, right? So / this now knows that it's in the same folder, so show me this as an alternative to this one, right? So I have another component called like, I don't know, let's just call this one like Dave, and Dave is a rectangle. So imaginative, right? Perfect. Look at that, isn't Dave great? And then if I press C, I can bring in a Dave, but then if I go into Dave, because he's not namespace, he's at the root, we can show any component But if we did like icon Dave, under Dave, it would default to icon, right? Because it's namespaced. Same here. So where is namespace, then it would, like, if we add extra variants, it knows which variant to swap to. So this world of like having this inheritance already, we haven't done it. And the alternative in Sketch would be, sorry, in Figma would be, we go into here and we create a variant, right? We create a variant and we'd make a new one. We go like this and we'd go boop, and we'd turn this one to tech adjacent magenta color. That one's not as nice a magenta, but whatever. And then, yeah, we go back in here and we give the variant a name and we call this one property like, I don't know, color or version or something. Come in here and we'll just say like default, and then this one's going to be pink, right? And now in here we've got our two versions, right? Again, so far this is coming out better. This is less work, right? And if you think about it, this is the same thing as a variant, but just in a different shape. Imagine that, just by adding slashes. And also, if you look at the names inside our variants inside Figma, you'll see when we select them, look at the file tree, it says button pink and button default. It's the same thing, it's just in a different shape. So we don't have that multi-dimensional thing though, right? So we've only got a single dimension. So this is where it does fall apart. We get a single dimension inside Sketch. We get multiple dimensions inside Figma. So if I decide that let's do the same thing again, we'll create our other one, our frame, and we'll put a little circle in this one. Why not? Look at that, isn't that fancy? I'm not even going to bother shaping it up properly. I'm just going to be a monster and just do that. So yeah, if I then bring this in, right, and then what I've got to do is come over here. And there's a bunch of different ways I can do this, but here's just one of them, right? And then let's say I'd have two more variants, so I'd just do another two, right? This one is not there, this one's not there, and I'll create another, so that's not color, this is, let's come back up to our variants, so properties, maybe a variant, and this one we call, like, I don't know, icon, and then icon would be true or false, but we'll do that properly now. So this is icon true, and this one is icon false, okay? So now, I come to here, and I have to then account for, I've done it the wrong way around. Whatever. Point is, hang on. These are both icon false. Icon true. There we go. And then there we go. It's the right around. Right. So we've got a single dimension, and we've got multi dimensions, so we can have like what, whatever. We've got this now. This is where, and there's another way. You don't have to be variants. This could also potentially be a Boolean, right? So I could then, instead of doing it this way, I could get rid of these two variants, and then I could come into here and then just like drag out. Let's just put another icon inside here. Copy that. Paste that. Put it at the top. And yeah, I can come into here and then I can just be like, if I just create a new thing, so we'll get rid of that icon and we'll just do another one. We'll do a Boolean. There we go. And then we just do icon. And then what we do is we come into here, and if memory serves, because I literally very rarely use this, icon true. And we've already got this weird sort of pseudo indirection thing, right? So now if I come to here, and then let's just get that reset to default. Excellent. And then, yeah, we've got the visibility of that set as a Boolean. And you can have multiple things attached to that Boolean, right? You can have like two objects or whatever. It's flexible, okay? It's quite flexible. And then you can sort of say like overrides. But then the overrides in Sketch are implicit. So the same setup here is not multi-tiered. What you do get though, because it exposes things by default, and I didn't believe this for a while, but I've started to, is that same setup. If I do this, right? And then do it again, put that to that side. To get that to that same setup, right? By default now, I've already got a nested symbol. So now, if I've got another icon, so if I call this icon Dave, this one's called icon Chris, right? And then this one is round, okay? So already, because I'm namespace, I've got icon Chris and icon Dave, okay? So my instance swapping, which I'll have to set up manually inside Figma, so I have to come into here, and then I'll just like mark this as like, let's do another property. I'll do like, again, this is the only way to do it. I'm just saying you have more options. An instance swap, that would be also icon, right? And then value would be Do you know what I mean? Button, whatever. And I can set preferred values, so I can set like the specific things that you can swap in and out. I've had 0 setup to get to that point in Sketch, but here's the thing, right? We don't have that multi-directional thing. But to get to the point where in this scenario we hide that icon, we can just come into here and just do this. Again, it's less work. We've done less work to get here. But we can't necessarily capture all of that complexity. So the next layer down is when we go into, let's say we've got primary, we've got hover, and then we've got standard, right? Or clicked or whatever. So let's say primary's got as a hover, okay? So if I do primary and then default, and then I'll do primary, hover. Okay, and then the hover color is going to be a little bit brighter. Let's say it's like that. Okay, sure, why not? And yeah, so now if I pull out a button, I've got this extra thing here. So I've got, oh, what happens? I've got primary, secondary, default, hover. Ugh, bit complicated. So what we'll do is we'll come in and we'll bring in primary, and then now we're namespaced. We're not even namespaced, are we? Now primary, hover, default. Do you know what I mean? It gets a bit complicated. So you go, well, that's a bit annoying. And here's that cognitive load coming higher in the list, because then what we'd have to do here is create an additional component, right? Grab an instance of this primary, wham it in here, right? I know. And then, yeah, we'll just fit that into there, okay? Turn that into a component, bring that one in, and now we've got the things inside, right? So, does that make sense? Should we make this make more sense? So we've got this containing thing now. We've got this containing element. Let's call this one button instead of frame, right? So yeah, we've got button, and then we can still do all of this. So what we can do is instead of bring that in, we'll delete the contents of here, and we'll bring in default, okay? And this is where it gets complicated, right? So now we bring in a button, and we're we should be anyway. Is that a bug? Ooh. Oh no, wrong one. Ha! Nested symbol. We're namespace into default and hover, right? So now we can change that. So if we go back into here and we bring in primary, and then we can't change it, right? So we've got primary and we have to do secondary hover. So now we've had to do a little bit of indirection. So we've nested one of these inside one of these, right, to make it work. This is where it gets technically messier inside Sketch, because I've said to myself, what if I want to have this hover state? Well, I have to create a scenario like this where I've got an instance of a child namespace of its parent inside here, and this still works fine. Like if I just do this, I can be like, "Ugh," and then just make this layout, make sure it is an auto layout, and make it fit. And then what we'll do, we'll bring another one in, we'll just do button, and then we should be able to go, blah, 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 blah. There we go, and it will inherit the right behaviors. So this works the same way as button primary we created previously, but it's now quite a lot more complicated. So we've got button, and we've got to the thing, and this is where the Figma thing is definitely superior, because we've created all this additional, and this is a flimsier setup than having this as a variant, right? Because the same thing in Figma would be, I'd add another one here, and I'd have another variation. So let's do the same thing, it'd be like that, and I'd make it brighter. I have to do one for the secondary button, but whatever. And then I'll go into properties, I'll add a variant, and that'd be like state, and then one would be like default, and the other one would be like hover, right? So state would be hover, okay? And then I've got my state, hover, and if I try and make it color, well, it has to be, for completion's sake, let's just do it properly, come on. There we go. And this one is hover. There we go. And now I can do, and there is no color 3, we'd have to go back. And you can see how, like, you know what I mean? Like there's this degree of extra management, which makes you, it's good at making you feel like you're being effective, but actually it's I keep going to delete this. Hang on, what's it? Oh, which one's got color 3 attached to it? And then you've got to do this. I love it when you've got to do this. Color 3, okay, there we go. And we go to default. Excellent. So now color 3 is gone. So we've got default and pink. And then we've got this multi-dimensional thing, right? So we've got default in both pink and default, and state, default, and hover. And then, yeah, this is actually probably better. However, However, right? And like, I don't know, I don't have as many options, but I have the core stuff I need here. And this previous thing also still works, right? I can still just do this. Again, this is where I have to think about this ahead of time, because whereas this works, and these are both simple examples, right? But where this works, and this is pretty straightforward, but when we get a more complex example which needs more, if I follow this down the rabbit trail, right, the rabbit hole, you see how much just in the basic getting this working, I've already had to deal with more complexity to set this up, but also a little more flexibility. I would say the result is these two drop downs that make me feel good about myself. But I still have my end result here. Being pragmatic, I can say this, and I just go into button, and I can just see all the variations I'll ever have, right? And then also, like, from here, I can just do this, right? And it knows the namespace itself. So if I come into here, and I just go, like, out of button, I just go home, right? Just to all symbols again. And I drag out primary, I can still change between these variants because it already knows the namespace. So actually, I don't even have to do what I just did. I just have a button, and instantly I have access to the other buttons, right? And then, yeah, I can still turn this off, right? And if I go into here and I turn this off by default, just make it visibility like nothing, that's changed the default for future buttons. If I come in and bring a primary button and see it's not there anymore. But also, let's say that this is still cluttered to look through here. I can then come in here and just say, well, this one and this one, well, let's just, I don't know, make it only work for swapping. So now, I don't see it in here anymore. But I can get rid of default as well. I don't need that. Let's come to here. And I'll go to default. And then that's also only available for swapping. So now, I only see, and this button's the one we're not using anymore, right? But I see one button called primary. I could just call it button as well if I wanted to. But now I can still change between those variations from here. Do you see what I'm getting at here? Like, and again, like, I'm choosing, I haven't got the time to make these very, very complex scenarios up in front of you. But, and again, I'm not saying this is necessarily superior, but it is more direct. And if we delete this one, we get rid of this, and we get rid of button, right? Where is it? Button. Let's forget button for now. If I want to see all of my variations of everything I can do, right? You know? And also, I can refer to different names in here. So I can say, well, I don't know, it's called Pete. And search for Pete. I can still do all this. So, again, there's a bit of, I've had to think about this. I've had to learn how to do this, right? I've had to figure this out. But, in terms of day-to-day use, it's really quick. And you know that thing you have to do a lot of the time when you have like a symbol and a symbol and a symbol and a symbol, because where Sketch by default exposes these on the top level, Figma doesn't always. Right, so there might be components inside here where, let's say, for example, this guy here has his own variation, right? So we'll add a property, we'll add a variant. And then we've got the, let's call this like the midnight version. Midnight. It's all edgy, which in reality just means that like the background's black. Come on, there we go. Okay, cool. Why is it called button? Dave. He's called Dave now. So come in here, and then, yeah, if I want to edit the property, I have to double click, come in here, and set Dave to midnight. Here's the thing, right? In the same setup inside Sketch, which is technically on paper worse. If now I have like icon Dave or icon Chris, well, actually, here's the thing. It's already there, right? Unless I say it's not. If I say this one, button secondary, come into here, and I can turn off the ability, if I actually just change it, what's with this? So turn off my access to Dave, right? I can do visibility, but I can't change the symbol anymore. So now I can just decide whether or not I want. Oh, can I actually? Wait, is that called Dave again? Just double check. Yeah, Dave. Dave's Dave. What have I done here? Dave. Oh, okay, sorry, yeah. Well, actually, how do I make Dave invisible? Ooh, I might have found a bug. But I can still do that from here. I can still grab this the exact same way and then make him invisible if I want. I can just do this, right? But if I leave that, I might report that actually, because that I think is a bug. If I leave this on default though, change the symbol. So it comes here, and then, yeah, I can just swap out Dave and Chris at my leisure. In fact, actually, could I set it to Chris instead of Dave? I just do Dave and then come back in here. Sorry, I'm just debugging in real time. Dave, and I get rid of the symbol. Can I still? No, I can't. Oh, I think that's a bug. Anyway, I'm not saying the systems are perfect, but that's my point, right? Like, so. Oh, yeah, that's fine. So yeah, I get these by default unless I turn it off. And again, it's namespace. So if I could then say, if I want to get to the same situation where I've got a instance swap inside of Sketch, which has the same sort of things, I can do what I did previously when I created button, right? And I can say, well, icons. I can be like, I don't know, yeah, like icons for buttons, right? And then I would rename space a bunch of these duplicates. Icon for buttons 1, and I could just create a bunch of these, right? And then by the process of building, the process of building one of these. Does that work? Oh, there we go. Get rid of that, and then we'll just convert that into a bugs. Ooh, hang on. Get rid of that. Oh, weird. Okay. I don't know what happened there. That's interesting. I might send this to the Sketch people. Anyway, here's the point. And if I decide I want to use this instance here, right? So if I come into here, and again, the setup is more complicated. It just is. But, and I change this from, let's just delete that. Actually, do that out. I'll do, what's it called again? 1. There we go. And then now, I get, not only do I get this, I get Dave inside there as well, if I want. But then I turn this off. So it's that nesting inheritance thing. But the thing is, right, if we talk about this in terms of like an indirection sandwich, let's go back to the Untitled UI thing. Let's go to badges. Badges might be an interesting one to look at. Fun. Inputs probably. No, inputs has got a ton. Drop downs, all this sort of stuff. Let's have a look. They'll be quite simple, actually. I'm not trying to mislead here. I'm just trying to say, whatever. But yeah, do you need this amount of complexity? Do you need a system that's complex? Because here's the thing, right? And also why I picked Untitled UI. Going back a few years, I was working at a company, and we're working on like a complex piece of desktop software. And there's a lot of inputs, and there's a lot of different kinds of inputs. If you work on like, and this is like, think more like 3D software, it's not just drop downs and whatever. You've got exotic inputs. Let's say like Figma or Sketch, you have some more exotic inputs. You've got things like, these drop downs here, these buttons for this, opacity sliders, these little toggly switches. You have these unique types of inputs you don't get on websites, right? So to save time and to try and make a system sustainable, we picked up Untitled UI. And the problem was, when we started to try and expand the system, you start to realize, I'm not saying Untitled UI is bad. If you use it straight off the shelf, it's actually quite good. The point is, going back to change that system expose you to how brittle the whole thing is, because it has to be by its nature. It's so whatever. The point is, again, we are creating pictures, right, of interfaces here. If I need this button to do something completely fucking different, I can just make a completely different drawing of it, right? Set some basic properties and just instance swap to it. It can be its own special little unicorn, do whatever the hell it wants, just that one time, and it will live pretty well, right? And the thing you've got to keep in mind is, how complex do I need this to be, right? We've got this pretty simple system going on here right now. Go to Primera. Oh, I've broken something in here. Let's turn all this back on. There we go. Yeah, so, do you know what I mean? Like, we've gained, if we were to time ourselves, this is faster. This is way faster to work with. And it's also why that doesn't sit right, because those, I wonder why that they weren't sitting properly. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Point is, there we go. Point is, Let's do the same there. Yay! Consistency. But yeah, the point is, you need to keep asking yourself in the situation with Sketch, how much complexity do I need to add to this system? And you've got to try and keep it as low as possible. Because again, if I only make the components we need and increment that system as and when we need new components, I answer the questions of that component let's think atomically, right? What was it? Organisms. Let's get an atomic diagram up, because I always forget the terminology. Atomic design. I get the words all mixed up, but it's about components. It's the same thing, right? And people sometimes use this as like a set of laws. It's not. These are rules of thumb. Design is all rules of thumb. All design is all rules of thumb, not just when it comes to like visual and UI design, stuff like that. Because really, in my case at least, the actual problem I want to solve is mostly the UX problem, right? It's like, how do you improve the quality of a system, not necessarily what the UI looks like. The UI is not an afterthought, but it's an expression of that, right? So, that's a new one. Ion. Someone's expanded it to ions as design tokens. Oh, great. Ultimately, right, when design tokens aren't necessarily a terrible idea, because the idea is you've got these pieces that you just sort of stick together, but it doesn't actually work in reality, because really, you need this, right? But actually, this is different. Let's go back to atomic design. Let's go to the original. Yeah, extending atomic design, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's immutable." It's really not. It's not an immutable system. In fact, it's just an idea that this guy called Brad came up with. So I can come up with it. Let's call it biscuit design. But no, I'm joking. It's not a bad idea. But not a bad idea at all. The point is, it's a rule of thumb. It's not like a thing. So yeah. This is why we've got like an input label and the input of the button. They are atoms. The molecule is the email. The organism is the sort of compounds, and then templates and then pages. Right? These two are very nebulous because they are very wishy-washy. Atoms make sense. Molecules and organisms, really, the distinction between these is not actually that tangible. They vary heavily in terms of complexity. You all break these rules. So if you try and be very strict about it, you're going to fall apart in these two places and these two places. So actually we've got atoms, so the small piece, and then some kind of larger piece, and at some point it's a page, and at some point it's a template. But a template is most of a page, and if we look in here, it's most of a page. And species of products, it's like, great, but how? What are we achieving here? Are we working within a system, and how well is a system doing things to you, right? So they've got a thing of subatomic, which is like your ions, same here, right? These are your design tokens, your space into color palettes. Ultimately, right, here's the thing. The typography will be whatever the fuck it needs to be, right? You'll bend those rules. The shadows, they'll be whatever they need to be. You'll bend those rules. The color palette, you'll change your mind about this. The spacing, I mean, maybe not so much, but the thing is, these will be what they need to be. These are not rules, right? They can't be by themselves. At some point, you'll have this, and you'll change, in at least one instance, what you do with this one thing, right? Do you let this concept that you can hold dear, like hold the weight of all the rest of this? For why? What is it simplifying? Right? Because in reality, you've got these things as like rules of thumb, things to fall back on, right? You will bend these rules. I'm not saying don't do it and not standardize anything. That's not what I'm saying at all. The design system should still exist, right? It's a series of standards. But the minute you're sort of saying, well, we need, you're no longer. Do you think this, right? This liquid, whatever it's called, liquid glass, whatever, fluid glass. What's called liquid glass? Do you think it's strictly bound? And think about in terms of the volume of UI you have to produce, right? Is it more than Apple, right? They have Mac OS, iPad OS, iOS, and then was another one, Watch OS, right? And then they've got the one for the Vision Pro. It doesn't matter because about 4 people bought them. But anyway, they've got 4 different operating systems, right? And they've gone through this massive challenge. A company with the GDP, which has the same amount of money as the GDP of a sort of European country, right? Apple have a lot of money. They have vast resources. They have 4 operating systems, right? They wanted to unify the design language across all of them, and they have failed miserably. And they've missed some really obvious stuff. They have failed. And, Apple used Sketch. That's not the point, right? But here's the thing, is at some point, for all of that work And a lot of these concepts were originated within Apple, right? And a lot of these other startups, they will always bend those rules. They will always fail. And if you spend a lot of time wrapping yourselves in this big coat of systems, it'll always have the rules bent. Create one that will allow you to bend those rules and be mobile, right? There were times with greater consistency that existed before this period. And the actual volume of work required to maintain those things wasn't actually that much smaller. If you go back to like the, I don't know, let's say like sort of 2011, 2012 version, era Apple, it was actually pretty consistent. But in terms of the volume, the surface area of what they were working with, it was very similar. You just didn't have the like maybe a bit of WatchOS. Let's say pre-WatchOS. Let's say it was iOS on Android, on iPad and iPhone, and then macOS. That's still 3 operating systems that have to look broadly the same. There was still a sort of coherence there. They still had a similar amount of products. They've just got Apple TV now, and Apple Music probably didn't exist back then, but they aren't also that congruent with the rest of it anyway. Core applications, their suite has remained the same. All they've really added is Freeform, right? But the rest of the application suite has stayed the same for about 10 years. Why is it less consistent now when there's more people, more work, more standards, more systems? What's the failing? And you say it's Alan Dye. It's one man doesn't control a ship or he steers the ship, right? He doesn't have that degree of... How can he? It's too big a system for one man to control, right? He sets the guardrails. He sets the tone. And it's a big fucking task he had to do. He failed miserably. He failed worse than he probably should have done. It's a badly conceived system, in part because it's so large. But if all those systems have been built inside an organization that large and they fail... I remember seeing a thing on Amazon's website where they had like a button. I think it was like a really obvious button, like... I can't remember what it was for. Something. Anyway, you couldn't read the text on it. You can read, it was like an orange button, and then the text was like very... You couldn't read what was on the button. You couldn't read the button. Amazon, the biggest retailer in the world, for all of their system building, at some point in that chain, you couldn't read the text on the button. I'm not saying it's solely down to the complexity added by all of these layers of stuff, but something so fundamental getting broken with all these guardrails in place in such a large moving object, you can't, the point is, how much, can you quantify how much that system has or has not helped? You can't. The point is the button still had invisible text on it on Amazon, and Liquid Glass is still shit. Don't think about, and I'm not saying that, again, if you're reading into this as saying, don't build systems, wing it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying don't adopt systems for the sake of adopting systems, and adopt them incrementally and use the variant that works for you, because it does, honestly, I swear to God, prevents these problems happening so often. It really, really does. I swear it does, right? You get products, let's look at some software products where they used to be able to iterate really quickly. Yes, they've grown in complexity, but the rate of complexity growth for front-end exposed surface area complexity versus internal complexity, if you've got what you see from an application, let's look at Sketch, for example. They're developing very, very quickly at the moment. It's really cool. It's really great, whatever. The point is, the only reason they can do that is because they've made some good architectural decisions at some point in their recent history to clear the way for them to develop the front end of the application, the thing that you see and I see and we interact with, the features, faster, okay? There's this tech debt behind it, which needs to be managed quite well, okay? When products slow down, the rate, either they don't need to iterate as fast, they haven't got the motivation to do so, or they've matured, that's also a thing. But a lot of the time it comes down to the technological complexity of the thing they're building has unnecessarily grown so much they can no longer iterate on the front end as quickly because of that tech debt. And that tech debt might even be things they put in intentionally. There might be hoops to jump through. A lot of times that tech debt is basically adopting React in any shape or form, right? You've exploded the complexity of the front end of your website because it has all these tools. Do you need React? Do you actually? Or are you using it because you know it, or because it's there? This is what I'm trying to say to you, right? Adopt systems incrementally and make sure they work for you. And everything is a rule of thumb. Okay? But going back to the context of specifically UI design is, it always boils down to you're drawing a picture of a product. Okay? And as long as possible, to keep that system movable. And I think at one point we all saw something collectively that when it came to sort of Sketch versus Figma, because I was there at the time, right? We saw something collectively which was like shiny. Oh, multiplayer. yeah, you have like multiple people on the same thing, and that's really cool. It's fucking pain in the ass in reality, but it seemed cool because Google Docs, the concept at the time, Google Docs was fucking exploding in popularity at the time because like there wasn't Office Online yet. Like, don't forget that wasn't a thing yet, right? Having multiplayer collaborative applications was novel in like what 2000, when was it, 2017 or whatever it was, 2018, 2016, I can't remember quite the year, but it was novel. And it was marketed as the Google Docs for design. And you go, that's great, yeah, we can all work on these things together. But the reality is, most of the time, you don't actually want people working with you in these one documents. It's oftentimes a solo affair. You know, sometimes you are working on the same document, but when it comes to third parties and like, you know, people outside of your sphere working with you, your stakeholders, your developers, your clients, that sort of thing, you don't necessarily want them perving on your files, right? Is it better? And you're used to it, and because it sounds like it's a better feature, it's on the side of the tin. It must be good, right? And again, I'm not saying like universally. This is not what you should read from this. If you do stumble upon this video, is that I'm saying that this simpler system is universally better. It just could be better for a lot more of you than you think, right? So, and also you can always move back. You can always move back. You can always make it more complicated. You can also do what I would like to do more of, is foster collaboration between designers and developers more often, right? Meet in that middle ground, because like if you've got that development experience, building this stuff takes about the same amount of time it does in Sketch or Figma as it does in like straight up markup inside a web browser, with the added benefit of you can make the actual thing straight away, and you can make it responsive, and you can, do you know what I mean? And your tools for building component systems, oh man, if you haven't done any web development in the last sort of 15 years, Jesus man, there's some good tools out there, you know, for managing this stuff, for making components. And again, manage that complexity and don't overcommit. It's just as difficult, in fact more difficult and more impactful in software engineering. Part of the reason why and also it's an older discipline, part of the reason why they've got so many ways to mitigate it, right? But there's a series of slippery slopes all the way around you, and you've got to try and navigate which ones to go down. It's one of the biggest challenges in software engineering. And I think product design, or functional, let's go put it, functional graphic design. Okay, it's not graphic design, but let's say UI design, right? It's like graphic design with more function, more bound by the function requirements of a system rather than being artistically driven, right? More so. There's lots of function inside graphic design because that's what separates graphic design from art. And then you've got, as on the spectrum of like engineering on one side and art on the other. I talk about this all the time. I've probably done it in one of these videos more than once, but I always see the making of stuff as sitting on a spectrum, right? If you're a creative person, and then AI's over here, just sort of like, bleh. But if you're an actual person who has put in the time and vocation to learn how to do these complicated things, it sits on a spectrum, right? On the left-hand side is art, on the right-hand side, you've got engineering. And in the middle, you've got, and these are all kinds of, let's call this the design spectrum, right? And we'll get a little blur. Let's make it like that color. Why not? And then, yeah, art's over here. Art's just what you see. It's just that's its value. It exists, and you can consider it for what it is. And that's the thing that thing does. It doesn't need to mean anything. It doesn't need to do anything. It's there to be enjoyed, to be considered, to be looked at, to be absorbed, right? There's value in that. If we get to sort of like graphic design, it gets further on this end of the spectrum. So we're sort of saying like, oh yeah, well, you've got branding, which has to communicate certain values, and then you've got like, you know, rules around print design, like certain legibility and whatever. And you get close to this sort of center point, and this is where you get UX, where it's driven by the requirements of systems. But then you've also got this side of things, right, where you've got engineering, which is like, we have a bunch of significant physical, let's say this is like mechanical engineering or like architecture, right? You have physics constraints which determine how systems need to go together, and they have these requirements in order how they're built, and it's very much pragmatic. There's also cost constraints, all this sort of stuff, choosing bricks, choosing like building methods. And then software engineering sits somewhere else on this spectrum, but around here is kind of like the UX-y region where a lot of this work is kind of similar, right? The point is, this side of things is newer than this side of things. Let's say software engineering is like here, right? You like the physical constraints of building buildings, but you have a lot of system building, and you build hypothetical buildings, right? But if they fall over most of the time, they don't fall on people. That's the difference. You're not as constrained. What you're doing is still intangible, right? It's got tangible value, but it's intangible in terms of physically. These things sort of are and will naturally kind of converge a little bit. and they're actually more similar than you think. But where this is older, they've had more time to spend working on. I mean, this is 50 years old. The whole discipline of modern UX is like, what, a decade at most, right? Thereabouts. It's been in the sort of 2010s posting, and also both these things are now currently in a really weird spot. This one is arguably in a weirder spot because actually we've spent the last decade teaching this lot how to do our jobs and building things like design systems which inform these lot how to do our jobs. And some people tacitly will not learn anything about these people. Let's make these things are both brown. That wasn't intent. Let's make him green or blue. This is an avatar cat, right? And this is a person. This is a whatever. Anyway, but yeah, this person refuses more often to learn anything about what this person does. But this person's been taking notes about what this person does. And really, you can both be happy and meet somewhere in the middle. By this person being a bit more pragmatic, a bit more maneuverable, and this person giving a shit about design and realizing it has value. And all I'm saying is, right, we need to get somewhere and be here. And then possibly cuddle, at least like hold hands or like handshake or, maybe share Bovril. It's probably not a very internationally recognised idea, Bovril sharing, or in England really. No one shares, but no one drinks Bovril in England anymore. Point is, what the fuck am I going about? Point being, right, is that fostering a better relationship with developers is a really good thing, and design systems are supposed to be a tool to do that. But in reality, a lot of the times they just put a wedge up, right? And there's fewer technological constraints on a designer, because again, for me to put this on a page here, I just draw a rectangle and I put some words in the rectangle, right? That's longer in code. That's the point. And the more time we spend defending the idea that this needs to take a long time, be complicated, to prevent that code be getting out, so they words, the less valuable to a business you're going to seem as well, right? Because that's the way they're all going. They need to make money. And so that's the sort of like the other side, the economic side of this is like, that's the direction in which the industry is moving. These roles are going to start to converge a little bit more. And being pragmatic and being focused on the things you need and the things you want to achieve is always better than system building, and I think as you get further in your career as well, like it reflects, I've built all these systems. Okay, cool. What did that do for the business? Well, I built these systems, and do you know what I mean? It's you see that thing in Office Space where it's the two Bobs and the guy. He's like, "What do you do?" Well, I pass the message to the engineers. Okay, do you do that? Well, no, my assistant does that. And it's like, well, you don't want to be that guy, right? You don't want to be that person who backs yourself into a corner. You say, well, I build a part of a big design system, and they say, well, why is it there? And because it's there, and I have to maintain it. It's like, well, couldn't you just sit with the developer and talk through some of this? And you go, well, because we've got a process. Okay, but does the process make it faster? And if the answer is yes, cool. But if the answer is no, you're going to be under greater scrutiny going forward, is my point. Point is, keep it simple, keep it pragmatic. I have run out of time to actually do my actual experiments because I have not done enough of this design system building inside Sketch to say, are there any, and this is the big thing which exposes me as a massive fraud, not a full fraud, a semi-fraud, a fraud adjacent, is there might be some massive gotchas I haven't seen yet. From my experimentation so far, again, I've not used this in super anger yet, but from my experimentation so far, actually there's a lot about this when you stop and, again, that cognitive load being up front, and ask yourself, do I need to do this? Do I need to build this? And do I need to build this right now? But here's the other thing, which is I find quite fun. Let's just pull this over here, just so you can. It's probably gonna open over on this screen. I didn't open up on the wrong screen, on the right screen. So I'm going to open up one file, and I'm going to be nearly done. Right? I haven't seen this. What is this UI kit? Let's enable that library. Can I open it? Can I open? Can I duplicate that to my drafts? You can't see my screen, but. And in my drafts, do I have this Inspire library? I do. I haven't even seen this, so I might be setting myself up for a fail here. Because I don't know what's inside it. Is it good? It's a thing. It's a thing. Ah, yeah, so you've got a big design system. Well, a big-ish design system here. Butto! Oh, it's broken. Great! Has it? Butto! So yeah, we've got... Let's have a look at this. I haven't looked at this. Let's have a look. Oh, group. It's quite fun. Oh yeah, this is some fun stuff you can do. You can be like, well, let's just do that. Let's just replace that with a random photo. What's it going to be? What's it going to be? Didn't work. Let's go into here. This guy, let's replace that image. We'll just do another. Let's do another sketch. Let's do a different face. There we go. That face. I quite like that. It's fun. Anyway, I might scrutinize this. Have a look at it, because yeah, we don't have that many modern day examples of design systems in Sketch. Because again, like a lot of it is, ooh, what's going on with these fonts? A lot of it sort of moved on. I'm interested to see how they handle some of this complexity, because again, there might be some. Ooh, this doesn't look very finished. But yeah, so a lot of the time, what's this? What's this? What is this? What is this? Okay. Oh yeah, it's actually, yeah. So a lot of the time you get this sort of, because there's fewer guardrail. There's this, like, you tend to have this thing where you lay out these screens. I'm just doing a terrible job of explaining this. Let me just go back into here. I'll do open, and I'm going to open up this Fluent Design thing. Is that it? There we go. So like some Microsoft thing, and you get the situation where you're building things like this, right? So we have, instead of having like, which again you can't do this in there's another thing, a limitation. It's coming to Figma actually, slots. I spoke to the Sketch guys and said you should add slots. But yeah, the way you construct these things, you get this, like, these larger contact sheets of stuff more often. And again, this is all like, this is very commingled into, you know, we do have a broad stroke sort of like, if you think atomically, we've got these sort of like chunks, and then they get built into, they create into larger things. This happens sort of naturally. Again, atomic design is like a rule of thumb. It's not it's not a rule. It's not a fixed thing. And yeah, like whatever. Point is, yeah, you make what you need and you expand it as you need it. There's this degree of, and again, I've stopped seeing it when I look at like Figma design systems. I see how a lot of them are like really overwrought and really overcomplicated, and you go, well, you know, for you, the business, for like the example, the thing you can show other people, that's cool. But like for you, the business, you know, like, do you need it? Do you need all of it? What can you go without? What can you build when you need it? Why don't you just build a good component and document it really well, and then, you know, and then revise it one by one? Because a lot of companies build a lot of stuff up front now, and it's not a great use of time. But anyway, I need to kick more tires on this whole concept, because again, I could be completely full of shit and completely lying. And if people see this video, I'm going to be very interested to see, because I'm saying lots of very inflammatory things, and people don't like when you say things that they don't agree with. And they'll be like, well, obviously, because you're an idiot. And I can only speak from my own experience. I can only see what I see. But, you know, whatever. Anyway, that's I'm just going to call it there, because it seems like a good time to do it. It's an hour and 3 minutes. And, yeah, that's the video.